Today, I am joined with Arabella Lawson, Head of Performing Arts at Uppingham Cairo. Hi, Arabella.
Good, thank you.
It's a pleasure having you here on the
Thank you.
second episode of Education Reimagined.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My background in terms of theatre began mostly at university. In the last year of university, I did a play called Kalila Wadimna, which was it had been written, I think, by an Iraqi, and it was something that got me interested, particularly in countries around the Middle East, which was an area of the world that I'd never experienced. And from that, I started being interested in using theatre to engage with social issues. So through various different organizations, I ended up in Italy, learning Arabic in Palestine, and then I ended up in Jordan. In Jordan was where I suppose I started to really engage long-term in, I guess, like social theatre. So I spent...
How long have you stayed in Jordan?
In Jordan, I was there for 11 years. And at the beginning, when I first arrived, it was essentially the period where there was a lot of refugees from Syria coming in. And I ended up starting a project in Zatari refugee camp, which was an inclusive theatre for children.
What do you mean by an inclusive theatre for children?
So this was based on, there's a wonderful theatre in London called Chicken Shed, which has sort of like little baby theatres around, one of which I'd volunteered in. And the inclusivity is about creating a space where every person, every child can get engaged, specifically those children who are often excluded for physical disability or mental disability. So our theatre in Zatari, we started with a very small number of children. Most of them were wheelchair users, but there were also children who, for example, had Down syndrome. A lot of children in the camp, for some reason, they were mostly from a rural area in Syria called Dara, and a lot of them had cerebral palsy. So we were working with basically a big group of children, many of whom had these different disabilities. And I remember at the beginning, like we got volunteers from the local community. So they were young men and women, young Syrians who were also living in the camp, and they would come to help facilitate. And one of them, he said to me, طيب يعني how can we have a kid, he's in a wheelchair, on the stage? And but there were so many ways of how can we not? There are so many ways we can, either he can be pushed, he can wheel himself, we even ended up creating a dance with all the wheelchairs. And I think that the idea was basically to try to break the assumption that people with disabilities, that is an obstacle to them actually engaging with the arts. And that was where I really saw, I suppose, the value of theatre, especially among a community of people who had just come literally from bombs. We had one little child in our clinic who had been trapped under the rubble for 2 days without being able to get out, and she couldn't speak. She'd stopped being able to speak. And our first workshop, I remember being really worried about, because I wanted to get the ideas from the children. And one of the first things we started was I think something about what would you love or what's your dream. And we did it through pictures. And the pictures that came out, you can imagine, there was homes, flowers, and then, the children would explain it. And, this as what was destroyed. This is what I can never go back to.
She was able to identify things within her through the pictures, and maybe was she able to vocalize after that?
So, well, this particular child, the one who stopped speaking, she was much younger. She took her about 2 years until she finally started to talk and actually to walk again. Everything was blocked. But yeah, so as I say, it was new for a lot of those, the people that were involved. There was one particular young man who worked with us as a volunteer. He himself had a physical disability. And he came on to very much help with the children. And he was amazing. He played the darbuka. He was the one who went and picked them up in this funny old truck that would go around the different caravans and tents to pick up the kids in the morning. And towards the end, we spent about 3 years with this theatre project. We gave more and more responsibilities to the volunteers. So in the end, they ended up directing their own shows. And this particular young man, soon after I left the camp, he was actually resettled with his brother to England. And in England, he chose to study theatre. And so he's now, I'm so proud that he is now touring England with a one-man show, which talks about his experiences as a person living with disability in Daraa, and then in Zatari, and then finally in England. He does it in English and Arabic. And as I mentioned, I've been trying to get him here. I'd really like to get him here to the school. He does performances and workshops for young people.
I hope you can bring on the one-man show here too. I'm sure it will open up the hearts and minds of the children to be able to see the development and the story itself, like putting aside the workshop itself, but this guy's story is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So now, how do you bring all of this experience into your work, your everyday work with children here in Uppingham Cairo?
So for me, theatre, the value of theatre is very much the humanity. I think telling stories is something that we as humans, it's an ability that we possess that other creatures, living creatures, they don't have. And I very much believe one of my core beliefs is that as a teacher or somebody who works with young people, there's really no point in teaching them how to be wonderful scientists or mathematicians or even artists unless they are kind people, or unless they are people who can empathize and contribute positively to our community. So everything that I have witnessed, and not only in terms of theatre, like one of the theatre companies I was involved with, it was Theatre Reportage. The woman who ran it was incredible, and she believed in order to understand someone's story, you had to live it with them.
That's immense dedication.
Absolutely. Yeah. And of course she learned all that, like she, from that, all of this. So having learned from her this, I feel like a lot of the stories that I learned, the people that I met with, I bring it into my lessons with the children in the sense of understanding life from different perspectives. This is one thing that theatre, literature, art can give you anyway. But my experience, it just means I can bring in stories from my own experiences of having to have shifted perspective.
Yes, and I'm sure your 11 years within the Middle East has brought immense culture and knowledge other than your upbringing, because it's like mixing East and West, and
yes.
and that's beautiful to bring home here in the school. There's a study that says that art participation can really affect emotional regulation and social development. How does theatre deepen self-awareness?
So in the way that we use it, for example, in school, it starts in the junior school, even as young as like nursery in the fours, in their drama lessons with their classroom teachers. The kind of the early things that you start to learn to do is very simple things like being aware of how your body breathes. Like this is like even as a warm-up, I might even use it for some of the older students. That awareness of physicality is really important. Awareness of your own emotions. So a lot of the younger children, we used to use a similar exercise also in another organization I used to work with for psychosocial support in Jordan. Who knowing your emotions, being able to name what you feel, because obviously this can help you not only in understanding yourself, but also understanding other people. So these are obviously like building blocks, right? Because as an actor, as a performer, you need to understand yourself as a human to be able to tell other human stories. As we get old, as we go up, so for example, in the senior school, in the second form, we look at, for example, Stanislavski. Stanislavski was a very important figure in the history of modern theatre. He's known as the father of realism. And when we study him, the students really have to look and recognize and acknowledge their own experiences and consciously think, how can I use this to inform my performance in order that it feels more authentic for the audience? So I've given you a big range there, but I think like these in themselves, this helps students become aware of themselves as humans, as people, as developing, members of a community in terms of their feelings and how they interact with others.
That's amazing. So the more they understand themselves, the more they can master themselves and master techniques, I guess. Also, so this is where you're taking them from.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. So that's developed from very early on. So so I would say
Did you, throughout your teaching here, have you witnessed a transformation in any of your students?
So I think one of the programs, or one of the activities that we do, that I find as a teacher invaluable, is Lambda. This is so Lambda is the London Academy of Musical and Dramatic Arts in London. It's a drama school, but it runs a program which can be accessed by people across the world, where children will learn. Follow different courses. For example, there's poetry reading, there is acting, there's public speaking. Here at Uppingham Cairo, we offer solo introductory, which is poetry speaking for the younger ones, and then acting. And the way we run these sessions is usually a coach will work with ideally one or two students at a time. And I think it gives you the opportunity as a coach, obviously, to really work with a person on an individual level. So obviously all children will learn differently. There was one girl I had last year. She started last year, and she didn't have any confidence at all in her ability to memorize, whether it's for academic purposes or for drama. And she struggled in the first few weeks. She was struggling even to learn like 3 lines. But I knew that she's a dancer. She's been in different performances. I knew she was a dancer. So we started to put movements to each of her lines. And this for her, it was transformative, because it was strange watching, because suddenly she could say all of her lines, just by remembering the
Wow.
movements. And so this got her through her first exam. So she went from like struggling to learn 3 lines. She learned an entire page, like a page of text. It was a monologue. She did the exam and she got the certificate. And I always feel like just the fact of going in front of an examiner and then realizing that, the examiner, who's a representative from Lambda themselves, they're external, and I'm not there in the exam.
Yeah,
But
that's high pressure.
It's high pressure, but actually they end up with the certificate and they feel they've really achieved something. So this year she went back, she did the stage higher, and she got like distinct. She got one of the highest marks in the school. So that's been a wonderful thing to see, and I think that's come obviously from the experience of rehearsing, performing, trying different things out, and realizing where your strengths as a performer are and where you can actually use them. You don't necessarily have to follow the route that everybody else follows. So that was beautiful to see.
That's beautiful to hear. That's really beautiful to hear. I always wonder if emotion, because nowadays everyone talks about emotional intelligence and how it's important to develop this for the years to come and for the future. Do you think it can be taught?
So my understanding, and this is coming very much from as a mother as well as a teacher, so I have, just to give context, I have four children, and as I think I mentioned earlier, one of the most important things I feel as a parent, as a teacher, is to teach your children how to be empathetic, how to be nice people to other people. And so I read a lot about, and I remember them talking those early years, the social interactions with the parent, the caregiver, siblings, is vital for the building blocks of emotional intelligence. So, for example, one of the things I'm very aware of is the risk of the screen, because a lot of younger children, and I saw this a lot in Zatari actually, where a lot of the children were just given a phone. It became a block to the social skills that they were learning, and a lot of them, because of the trauma they'd suffered, there was already a blockage there. It could have been in language communication. A lot of them were seeing videos of what had happened to their relatives.
So it reiterates the
It
trauma.
was reiterated, but there was no human contact there. And so my point is, I think those early interactions with other people is really important. How theatre can help, even from a young age, is, again, it's that awareness of yourself and then awareness of others. So, you might be working in a pair as a little person, saying, I'm, for example, you do a happy face, the other person has to reflect that back to you.
Yes.
That is a really simple example of just that. I'm listening to somebody else and I'm feeding it back to them. Yes. And obviously you can get you can deeper and deeper in terms of actually how would you feel if you were in that person's situation when they just tripped over. How would you feel? And actually asking the children to think about it and then to try to express that, whether it's drawing or words or whatever level. I think all of this, it is being taught emotional intelligence. And obviously, again, like I think so we use it in the senior school. We do use text from different places, and I think that's really important. Again, because for example, you put like we've used Blood Brothers recently, and this, you know, you're taking people back to 1970s Liverpool. It's not necessarily an era that they have any expertise of, but you have to get them to imagine like really what this was like, and that does stretch your ability to empathize, and you're practicing skills by even just asking the questions. Like, I need you to be curious. Like, one of the things I ask them to do is to really understand their character, and I push them for more questions. You say, okay, this character, he's angry, type why. Or why does Mickey hate his older brother so much? What would you feel like if you were 7 years old, your brother's 8, and he's like making fun of you in front of all your friends? And really pushing them to, like, okay, you know, even further, like why and why again, so that they really
amazing.
get used to really digging into somebody else's story. And then they have an obligation to show it to me. I'm not interested in, and that moment, I don't need to see them. I want to see the other character, and you're responsible for doing that in order to get your grade or whatever.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I think right there and then, this is the power of storytelling, and this is the power of the arts, literature, and creative expression. I think we should never stop. I mean, like, this is amazing, and you've highlighted something a bit troubling about screens and the screen time, and it reminded me of how in Uppingham Cairo it's a no screen
Yeah.
zone, and I'm sure this creates space for kids to actually be able to engage in all the beautiful things that you're saying. That's
And
amazing.
I think it's one of the huge positives of the school.
So, Arabella, so far the conversation has been so inspiring. So now moving on, how are the arts lived and experienced in Uppingham Cairo?
So, talking specifically about obviously the performances,
Yeah.
as I mentioned before, so pretty much all the children from the nursery upwards will have until third form, when they obviously choose their options for GCSEs, they will all have drama lessons in some form. So in the junior school, that will be taught by the classroom teachers. It's very integrated with English. This is part of the UK curriculum for the junior school. So this means that in those lessons, they are learning those kind of basic skills of how do I stand on stage, awareness of where the audience is, the physical skills of, projecting my voice so that it can be heard, the habit of using my face and my gesture to help the expression of, the verbal expression. So all of these kind of foundational skills are taught in the academic lessons, and then obviously in the senior school it becomes more specific and more, based in theory and related to practitioners. So this in itself means that every child is obliged to engage with drama in some way, shape, or form. Certainly in the senior school, every lesson is practical. Most of the theoretical stuff is covered in prep, which means that every child will be up on stage. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're doing a solo performance. It's usually group work. We do a lot of group games, etc. So this is, I would suggest, perhaps a soft way into drama, right? Because you're not actually performing in front of a live audience of parents, etc. We then obviously have the Lambda program, which we talked about. This is optional; it's extracurricular, and that runs currently after school. And we then, next, for the younger students this year, so the Lambda exam itself, they have to learn, they obviously have to learn a text. This year, we decided to transform that into a drama club for the younger ones. So for the 5s and 6s, which just meant that they worked on imagination, creativity, working as a group. They ended up doing a small performance here on the stage, which was complete their own ideas, their own characters. So hopefully we'll continue that next year as well. So drama clubs alongside Lambda. And then we have a series of events throughout the year. So it depends on which age group you are as to which ones you'll have access to. But for example, in the pre-prep, so that's from nursery to the 6s, they do a Christmas show every year. So that's in early December usually. And they will be part of a singing, there's some dance, and the older ones will take on some dialogue in that as well. For the prep school this year, they're going to be all of them will be involved in a big musical performance that will essentially precedes the senior school end of year production. For the senior school, the difference is that the children will audition. So it's only those who are really interested in doing the theatre, and then they will obviously be selected and go through the rehearsal process.
I think that's a fantastic. Is there anything else?
The other little events throughout the year, we have the harvest, we have the Christmas concert, speech day, and these are when the children, for example, they can do poetry recitals, smaller acts, solo singing, there's talent shows. So they're kind of smaller events where they might have the opportunity, either willingly or they'll be asked by the teacher to then come up and perform on stage.
Yeah, I love how there's versatility in entry points, because I'm sure you meet a lot of shy children and shy kids and students. So it's beautiful to have like different levels of entryways into self-expression and into the arts and into drama, and this is beautiful. Is creativity normal for everyone, or does it require a different way to access it? Because there's a lot of, I think there's a stigma among us grown-ups, and I'm sure we transfer that to our kids. And no, creativity is not for everyone. I'm not creative. Like this word was like, I'm not creative.
Yes.
So how do you, like, first of all, are all kids creative?
So funny enough, as a child, I was one of those kids who thought I'm not creative. I remember having one of my best friends at school. She was the most incredibly imaginative person. When we had to ask, they had to ask her to do stories, she'd come up with the wildest ideas. And I remember feeling very envious of her because I didn't seem to be able to do that. So I think obviously people are creative in different ways, right? But ultimately, a bit like you were saying, like we're all problem solvers all the time since you're babies. You find a blockage, I don't know, and then you find a different way around it. You're trying to build a block or something, this doesn't work, and so you try something else. This in itself is being creative, right? You're finding something different. So yes, I believe everyone has the capacity for creativity, and that could be in science, that can be in DT. I think sometimes there can be a stigma that blocks students' creativity in certain areas. Even in sports, you can be creative. You can be a creative football player with your strategies, with your skills. So, for example, I find it a lot with certain age groups, boys. The boys will say, oh, no, this is the dancing, the singing, the painting, all of this is for girls, which as a mother of a creative boy, I find incredibly limiting, absolutely. So I do think this is something that it should be challenged on their level, in the sense that creativity is something that all of the civilizations of the world have been built on creativity, and largely, if you look at history, a lot of that has been male, if we look back at history. Anyway, the point is that, so I think in Uppingham Cairo, we engage the children all the time in the performing arts from when they're little. And I think this is really important in reaching those children who perhaps don't feel that this is their area, because they have to be involved, especially when they're younger. It's a thing that they're all doing. They love the costumes in general. This is one thing. And they love that when the set comes, they all get excited. They're all singing the songs. I think some of the most beautiful moments come from, for example, often we're working on a song and we're trying to get a certain rhythm, or we're trying to get them all to do a certain thing at the same time, and they suddenly get it, and they see all of us, the drama teachers, the music teachers, the classroom teachers, who are exhausted from all the effort, and we're like, yeah, you got it. And then they kind of realize that the hard work does sometimes pay off in this, in the effect that they can then have on other people as a group, not just as individuals. So I think the fact that they are involved regularly in productions where they all have to play a part, and they are given responsibility to represent their class, their school, by standing on stage, by singing loudly, by participating. I think this is really, it's really important to give them those opportunities, that experience.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, please.
And then in terms of, because you asked about creativity, explicitly in our senior school lessons, I do talk about creativity, and it's a muscle. right? You stretch it. So for GCSE, they have to do a devising piece where they create their own story entirely. Now, in order to engage with that, you need to exercise your creative skills, but you need to sometimes have confidence that you can have creative ideas and also that your ideas are valuable. So in some of the lower years, then now I'm explicitly working on that idea of pushing their creativity. So again, it's a similar thing to before. You've given me, for example, I've given you a picture, you've described it. Now I want to know more. Push the boundaries more. Don't limit yourself. Okay, it looks like it's in a box, like these kids.
I can't get over how you said, no, creativity is a muscle and you're expanding it. And I think this is one of the realest things I ever heard, like about creativity. And I love it. Thank you for saying that.
No, of course.
Truly, thank you for saying that. How do you flex the muscle? Like, give me other ways.
So I think, as I was kind of implying, I think a lot of it comes from confidence and value in your ideas. One of the things I love as a drama teacher is improvisation. Because in improvisation, especially when you teach it explicitly, the first rule of improvisation is something we call yes and, which means I accept your idea. I accept it. I have to. You're my partner. I accept it, whatever it is. And I build on it. Now, this means, so if you and I were partners, I don't know, you were to say to me something like, I don't know, oh my gosh, there's a massive big hole in the stage. This might have been like the last idea you think is not very good. I have to say yes. And I have to do it big. And this automatically, this gives you like a validation that your idea is good and it works. And then I have to build on it. And our entire sketch will depend on just that small idea that you gave. The other thing in improvisation that's nice is you don't give them time. You know, you're on stage immediately. It's a live audience. You have to come up with something, and anything works. And I think so it's practice, it's confidence that I can say anything and the next person will use it. And it's also building that, in order to do this, you need to obviously create within your class or your group of people, the idea that you are an ensemble. Whatever another member of the group gives, you are going to celebrate it and use it. And this is part of your job as an ensemble. If you say no, if you say that's not a good idea, you're not only hurting that person and putting them down, actually you're breaking up that ensemble. And we actually can't achieve anything like that as a group, you included. So I think these kind of experiences and skills and approaches, ways of thinking is a really important part of.
That's so beautiful, and it brings me back to our first episode with Emma, because in Uppingham Cairo it is a character driven education.
Yes.
It's all character development. The focus is always about character development, and here in this discussion of the arts, we've tapped into empathy, we've tapped into confidence building, and now we're tapping into community and how you actually, once you know that we're within a certain group of a certain team, you show respect and you show I'll say empathy again because I think empathy is one of the most important things.
Yes.
But also you show us a solidarity.
Yes.
And this is beautiful. This is absolutely beautiful values. What do you think other values that can be that also are Uppingham Cairo values that you can bring out through art?
Through art. So I think one of the things that I focus on a lot as a teacher, when you perform it, you're taking a risk, right? Because you're in front of an audience in some way. So a lot of the children and adults as well, they will feel uncomfortable, unwilling to take that risk.
Yeah, of course.
One of the things I always focus on, especially again, it comes with Lambda just because it's that one-on-one kind of coaching, but it can also be in a performance situation when we're preparing the children in rehearsal to perform in front of the live audience. You're on a journey, right? So you might try something that maybe doesn't work 100%, or you don't feel that was absolutely, didn't get the effect that I absolutely wanted. But even that experience, you can learn from it. So I think one of the things I encourage, it's that constant endeavor, keep being, you're responsible for your learning in the end. So it's nice to be able to give those children the opportunity to try, and then to reflect on their own experiences, and to think, if I'm not happy, how can I work to build on that so that I can then grow? And then you offer them the tools and the support, etc., to do that. So I think yani endeavor, risk taking, resilience. Like I can stand up on stage, I can forget my line. It's okay. I can learn that I can still come back on stage the next day and have another go. And this is really important.
I think that's very, it is beautifully said as well. And I think that builds character.
Yes.
To show
yes.
up, to keep showing up. Like, even when you fall and you mess up, you still show up.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
Yes, absolutely.
So in a high performing academic environment, how do you protect the space for the arts? Because you just given me it's so beautiful. I think it's so rich in Uppingham Cairo. But how do you protect the space
for the arts? So as you kind of implied, I think Uppingham, certainly in my experience, Uppingham Cairo gives so much space for the arts, so much more so than in other schools that I've been in, which is wonderful to be able to work in an environment where it's valued. I suppose that particular conflict for me is most evident in my older students, who are then obviously having to be responsible for more and more homework, independent work in their, let's say, their spare time. So I think there's a few things. I think one of the things that I've certainly experienced myself, like I was someone who was very academic at school, I really enjoyed it, but for me, drama, it supported that in different ways. So obviously, in a very obvious way, you've got you've got an English story, and then you can see it, you can take a drama perspective on, understanding the literature. What you learn in drama kind of adds skills to you as an academic, as a researcher, as a critical analyst for texts. I think also it's important, a bit like sports and the what you call them, like the arts in general. I think drama gives space for children to move, use different parts of their brains and their body, and this is really important in general. Obviously, like health-wise, right? So I can't constantly be, for example, reading or studying or sat at a desk or sat at a computer. I need to be physical. This will allow, a physical break will allow me to then work better or use my mind better. So I really think that drama, along with the other kind of subjects that are perhaps more physical or more artistic, they use, again, those different parts. I think that supports the ability of a person to do well in all subjects. I think that the fact that the community as a whole clearly values the arts in terms of how big the productions are, how seriously they're taken, by everybody in management, the teachers, the support that is asked of the entire school, especially last year, in our first year, we had every single member of the community involved in Peter Pan, making Peter Pan. And I think that certainly, I saw that especially in my younger children, my own children who were in nursery and the 5s and 7s at the time. They witnessed this entire community come together to work to build a performance. And I think the children growing up in an environment where they see that people give value to creative expression and then which is then appreciated more widely, they automatically start to, internalize the sense of the fact that this is considered important. This is considered praiseworthy. So I think those are a few things.
Yeah, I love that, because I think as a community, the arts are always seen as a extracurricular activity, or like not a necessity, not like one of the core subjects, but I think Uppingham Cairo is actually breaking the stigma beautifully, so beautifully.
Yes.
And I'm sure the parents are seeing the performances and they couldn't be more proud.
I hope so. I mean, I remember speaking in Jordan. So my background in teaching was really in Jordan.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the last few years they actually introduced the arts into the curriculum, the national curriculum. Before then, there was nothing.
Yeah.
And I remember a friend, she's an incredible woman. She was the founder of a community center called Ruwad in Amman. And I remember her telling me about the importance of the arts in terms of a person, a human, understanding their own identity, who they are within the world, and then obviously the next step, who are other people, etc.
Yeah.
But being able to use the arts where it's a space where you can explore, you can test out, and this is also the plastic arts, like, how do I express myself, how can I, and of course in the creative subjects there's no limit to that. It's not like another science or maths, like I weigh I weigh this, I'm this height, I'm kind of like I fit in the human species. No, it is creative. And this, I think it allows a space for especially children and young people who are trying to learn what their values are. When they introduce themselves, what do they want other people to think of them? The arts
How they
is
see themselves as well.
Yeah, how they see themselves. And this is I believe this is such an important part of a person growing up. If you want to give the holistic education that Uppingham Cairo intends to, then you need the space for the children to be able to explore who am I and what is important to me. And I think the arts are the perfect space to do that.
I think the students are lucky to have you, actually, and Uppingham Cairo is definitely breaking a lot of boundaries, adding so much value to the arts, and through drama and through poetry and through so many beautiful aspects, honestly. So that's I'll take you kida in a little bit of a philosophical tangent,
Okay.
because I believe that creativity is like the energy of life, like it's a birthright, and I would love to hear what you think about that.
So I think as we mentioned briefly before, obviously every human, this is kind of, we are creative, right? We do things that other species don't do. We bring things that are new. We don't just follow instinct. So I definitely think that creativity exists in every child that comes into Uppingham Cairo. I suppose besides giving that space to flourish in different ways and in different subjects, as I mentioned before, I do think it's very important to do that alongside the development of values and a sense of being part of a community.
I love that.
Yeah.
So what are your hopes to see your students and children after graduating and presenting themselves into the world? How do you see them, like walking the world?
The students at Uppingham Cairo, that we have at Uppingham Cairo, I think are incredibly lucky. They have so many opportunities, so much support. The school is one of the strongest, got one of the strongest pastoral systems. The ratio of even teachers to students, it's so small. I think our children have a huge opportunity to develop as confident individuals that have had access to a whole load of different subjects, activities, experiences. My hope would be that they take full advantage of that, and that they, alongside learning skills and knowledge, I hope that we can also be successful in grounding them in the values that are important to them. Like, they know who they are, they know where they're coming from, but also that they have aspirations to go into the world and use what they have gained in these formative years to do something that is of benefit to their communities, to their families, to their countries. I think, obviously we don't know what the future is going to look like, but I really would hope that the children would go out with confidence, with empathy, with the ability to obviously be resilient, as all young people are going to have to be, and to be good people.
Beautifully said. So in closing, if you Like, I will tap into your creativity. I can't not to. If you imagine Uppingham Cairo as a persona, how would it look like?
So I think the first descriptive words that come to me would be around courage. I think that persona would have to be very courageous. Uppingham Cairo has a very clear direction, and it's not easy. There is a lot. The aspirations are incredibly high, and what I feel is that this person is determined, is resilient, is willing to make bold choices and changes, and to stick to that objective that they have. I think that, I think the person has to have an awareness of roots. Okay, it's new, and it's young. It's starting something that's different.
Yeah.
But in order for that to be well, to be strong, it needs to be well grounded in traditions and values that go back before, and those obviously would come both from, Uppingham Rutland in the UK, but also from, the ground where we're sitting now, the place where these young children are coming from. I think also this person would have to, this person is ready for challenges, ready for changes, and willing to boldly confront them.
Beautifully described. Arabella, thank you so much for this mind-opening and heart-opening conversation. Truly, I personally enjoyed it, and I hope our audience enjoyed it. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much, Yara. Thank you.
Thank you.